All right, viewers, getting you some big break is coming in. An interim trade deal between India and the United States is likely to be finalized in the next 48 hours with negotiations underway in Washington. India's trade team extends its stay in Washington last week to iron out key differences as the two sides look to clinch a mini deal before the July 9 deadline when the pause on US tariffs is set to be lifted. Both sides have dug in their heels over a number of issues, including Washington's demand that India open its market to genetically modified crops, a long-standing red line for New Delhi due to risks to its farmers. Okay, so we see that there could be a very important trade deal which could be finalized in the next 48 hours between India and US. And to understand what could be in that trade deal and why is it important, I just want to go to Abhishek Kapoor, our senior executive editor for that. Yes, Abhishek, big inside scoop on India-US trade deal. What could be inside it? And it's very anticipated. This trade deal is very anticipated, Abhishek.
Well, yes, Shivangi, so give me some time to explain to our viewers as to what's really happening. Intense negotiations taking place as we speak. In fact, one of those interlocutors I spoke to told me that this is a trade equivalent of what's called in the military an eyeball-to-eyeball standoff, so to say. And, clause by clause, section by section, line by line, comma, words, etc. All those things are into the play insofar as these negotiations are concerned. What we are getting to here is that a mini deal is likely to be signed now or agreed upon now as part of a trade-off to meet the July 9 deadline of President Donald Trump and then subsequently the more difficult or meatier issues. For example, India's contention on the steel and aluminum duties, and also the automobile industry, automobile exports to the United States, and from the American side, the issue of genetically modified crops and larger agricultural exports from them to us, particularly of maize and soybean. Those are the issues for which both the sides might buy time in terms of India telling the Americans, okay, fine, we will go back to our rule book, we will go back to our certification processes and maybe, make some amendments in a manner that if not directly genetically modified crops, but processed products. For example, in the case of maize, instead of buying genetically modified maize, we might end up buying ethanol, which is used for blending in biofuel in India. And in fact, there is a huge demand for which in the last few years, it has grown to by about 500% in terms of India's imports. So all those nitty-gritties are being worked out. So you can expect that in the mini trade deal, issues like steel and aluminum duties perhaps might be deferred for later. The issue of genetically modified crops and the direct import might be deferred for later because it's a ticklish issue in India with a large section of the agricultural leadership and the industry leadership not really interested in genetically modified crops at this stage. The experience has been mixed in terms of BT cotton, for example, and there are not enough studies to support that in India. We can hit the ground running insofar as GMOs are concerned. So all those things are there. But as of now, what we are hearing is that a mini trade deal between India and the United States is in the offing and possibly to be announced, if not in 48 hours, then definitely over the next 3 or 4 days.
Right, Abhishek. In fact, as we could just elaborate on the roadblocks that were in the path of this trade deal, like agriculture you mentioned, even dairy industry is one, where this is a very sensitive point between the two countries. So if you could help our viewers understand the challenges that have come in between the two countries as far as the trade deal is concerned.
Well, I completely missed the question, Rakshita, but, there are other aspects of the trade deal which perhaps constitute a low-hanging fruit. So, for example, the Americans want more apples to be exported to India. Now, as of now, America accounts for about 9 or 10% of total apple imports of India. Now, there is a catch. Much of the apple imports come from Turkey and New Zealand. Now, in the immediate backdrop of Operation Sindoor, the kind of relationship that has panned out with Turkey and the manner in which Turkey conducted itself standing with Pakistan, then maybe we could allocate some of the quota from the Turkish apple imports to the Americans, and that's just, as I said, one of the low-hanging fruits. These are challenging conversations and negotiations, to say the least. Where, as I mentioned, very difficult talks at some level, to the extent that one interlocutor, in fact, suggested that in military terms this would be called an eyeball-to-eyeball situation. But still, a lot of progress has happened, and both the sides are aware that something has to happen before July 9. Remember, even in the absence of a trade deal, the United States has already put in a base of 10% of duties, and they can go up to 26%, as was announced earlier in the month of February. So obviously, on both the sides, there is a certain deadline in mind before which at least a mini trade deal is expected, which, as I mentioned, if not 2, definitely 3 or 4 days.
Right, Abhishek, thanks so much for joining us with those details coming in on that story, viewers. We shift our focus to a breaking news coming in. Now, the DGC